All right, welcome folks to the MMOA podcast. My name is Dustin Jones, and I have with me a very special guest, Claire McLean of Rogue PT and Wellness, probably one of the more popular Instagram handles and accounts for a lot of PTs to follow for exercise ideas, a very unique practice in Orange County. I'm not around Los Angeles, right? Fountain Valley to be exact. But an awesome spot, massive facility, and she's doing an amazing job in that area. And we're going to have her on to talk about her career, Rogue PT and Wellness, and just what her inspiration is for all the amazing things that she's up to. So Claire, welcome. Thank you for chatting with me.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on. I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. So I want to start off with a little bit about your journey, because you have a very unique practice, a unique perspective. You're not the typical PT. I feel pretty confident in saying that. Even we haven't met in person, we've interacted online. What were you in PT school? Were you like the outpatient ortho, wanted to do the sports thing? Were you all neuro? Were you geeking out about the ICU and acute care? Like, what was your initial interest when you first got into PT school? Where did you think you were going to end up?
Yeah, I really did not know where I was going to end up. I think that's how I continue to roll. Is people are like, what's your 5-year plan? I'm like, I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years. That's a long time. So in PT school, I knew that I was interested in healthcare, but I was interested more in a little bit of holistic exercise-based healthcare as opposed to like medicine or surgery. So, I thought very briefly about medical school and wasn't really interested in that approach. My dad's a chiropractor. I wasn't really interested in going to chiropractic school, but I started volunteering in undergrad at some PT practices in the hospital, at a pediatric clinic and ortho, and enjoyed all of that experience. So I kind of just went in like, I'm interested in physical therapy and I don't know exactly where. I honestly did not feel super comfortable because I played sports growing up, but I did not ever go to PT myself. I didn't have an athletic training background. So I actually was pretty nervous most of the first year PT school that was so much ortho based. I had so many classmates that were athletic trainers and had all this experience. And I felt like I had no idea what I was doing. I may have cried during my first practical. And so, I knew I liked PT, but ortho was not like my jam from the beginning. I could kind of tell it just didn't feel quite right. So by second year, when we started the neuro content, I was like, okay, this is interesting to me. And I have to say, I did go to PT school being a little more interested in neuro. I didn't even exactly know what that meant, but one of my neighbors when I was in high school had an aneurysm and survived, but very severe deficits. And my mom kind of worked with her for a long time and she got a lot better. And then when I visited USC, Dr. Kathy Sullivan was talking about the research in people who had a stroke and neuroplasticity. And I was like, that sounds really interesting to me. That we could kind of change how the brain is functioning through movement and exercise. That seemed really cool. So neuro semester was definitely, I felt like, okay, I now understand what's happening. I really like these classes. So I liked pediatrics as well. I had a long-term clinical in peds. And so I was kind of just more on that neuro ped side. And then had the opportunity when I was finishing PT school, USC had a neuro residency. And I definitely was still not super confident in my skills as a physical therapist, which I think probably people now would be surprised, but I really felt like I had no idea what I was doing when I was graduating from PT school. And so I felt like a residency, I really loved neuro and I felt like there's still a lot to learn and I need mentoring and more experience. And I kind of like the university setting. So I like being, taking classes. I continue to love to learn. Teaching was interesting to me. So I applied to the USC neurologic residency and was accepted. And so I did that the first year after PT school. And it was because of that program that I got to meet Becky Farley and was exposed to LSVT big. So that was really early in my career. Mm-hmm. I started implementing that. And USC, I was at the faculty practice at USC for the residency for my clinical work. There were options of either being at Rancho Los Amigos, which is, a national rehabilitation center that does amazing work, but is much more like acute rehab and sees certain diagnoses for their outpatient practice. And I actually ended up being at USC, which was much more of a Parkinson's, vestibular MS type of practice. And so I started seeing a lot of people with Parkinson's, implementing LSVT big and the aerobic research that I was learning, and people were getting better. And I was like, this is cool, because this isn't supposed to be possible. People with Parkinson's, it's supposed to be a degenerative condition where they get worse. And I'm seeing people get better and stay better. And they're telling me that they've been to PT before, this has never happened. So that's kind of like right after PT school during the residency, I just kind of fell in love with working with people with Parkinson's. And so that has pretty much been the primary diagnosis that I've worked with in my career, and I still really love it.
That's awesome. So I just want to get an idea of the time frame. What year-ish was that?
So I graduated
residency when you were there?
That was 2007 to 2008.
Okay. So 2007 to 2008, we're in 2022. How or what specifically has changed in your area of practice in terms of perceptions of how we can help people, people that may have Parkinson's? What has changed in some of the treatment methodology and our perspectives of how we can influence people from now compared to back then?
Yeah, I mean, back then it was just the initial research was being published. Like I think it was 2007, Beth Fisher et al., a group published on high intensity treadmill training for people with Parkinson's, and showed that there was actual neuroplastic changes. And they were like, I think the first paper to show brain changes from exercise. And they were doing, let's see, what kind of transcranial magnetic stimulation as TMS as their measurement. So not as a treatment, but that was their measurement for hyperexcitability in the brain. And so they showed that when before training, people with Parkinson's had hyperexcitability, and that's related to symptoms, whereas the healthy controls have kind of a normal level of excitability. When people with Parkinson's exercised intensely using the treadmill, they reduced their excitability down closer to age norms. So that was one of the first studies that has been published. So I would say in the past 15 years, there have been, hundreds of studies probably on exercise for people with Parkinson's, all the way from looking at brain changes to more physical changes, looking at balance and things like that, strengthening. So a ton of research has come out during that time. But basically the problem is, that research isn't being implemented in very many places in the real world. So there's all this research, but a lot of neurologists will still say, well, exercise isn't proven to slow disease progression. And that is true. I mean, I don't know if we ever will be able to prove it, because the type of study that would be required to prove something like that is hard and super expensive. But I mean, all the studies added up together are showing there is a very high likelihood that exercise is really the best opportunity we have right now. There are medications and treatments that are very helpful, but nothing that really helps the way that exercise does in terms of the breadth of effects that there are, in terms of the long lasting effects there can be with continued exercise. So a lot more research is out now. And I think there is much more knowledge. I mean, there's more neurologists that are referring to therapy and to exercise programs. There's more of a general awareness amongst the population of people with Parkinson's that exercise is helpful and that they should be doing something. Power, Parkinson Wellness Recovery has evolved. LSVT Big is out there, Rock Steady Boxing, Pedaling for Parkinson's. There's a lot more programs. So a lot more people know about it. So that is great. Now it's more a matter of, exactly what people should be doing, and more the problem. A lot of people, I think, know they should be exercising, but they still don't really know exactly what or how. And there's still a lot of barriers to participating in exercise programs.
Yeah. And I would say, what you're doing with the NeuroCollaborative, with that group of individuals that you're leading and providing continuing education, I mean, that is very, very helpful to solve that problem, to empower clinicians and equip them to be able to serve these folks. Do want to mention NeuroCollaborative. I'll drop a link for the podcast listeners. There's going to be a link in the show notes to NeuroCollaborative, which is Claire's continuing education, amongst with a couple other individuals, correct?
With
Team
Aaron,
effort?
yeah. Aaron is my business partner there for NeuroCollaborative.
Awesome. I'll drop that in the podcast show notes and then in the Facebook group as well. So you mentioned some of those early studies looking at kind of intensity and how that influenced that excitability. One thing that I really admire about your practice and the videos that you share is how you're able to scale intensity to so many different activities, but not only intensity, but also complexity. I've gotten so many ideas of different interventions and different setups of how to make things a little bit more challenging from maybe a motor dual tasking situation or a cognitive dual tasking situation or both in a crazy gate obstacle course situation, like all kinds of ideas. I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts of how are you dosing the intensity of your interventions, and how are you thinking about making things more complex or even more simple based on that person that you're working with? Kind of what's your thought process whenever you're working with these individuals?
Yeah, and I have to say, I mean, our setup is different too because we actually are mostly working with people in a class setting. So, I mean, majority of my practice up until I started Rogue was kind of traditional outpatient setting. So that was most of my experience. And there, I really felt somewhat limited because most people are coming in referred, and we're starting kind of at square one and just getting them started with exercise, exposing them. And I often felt like, at the time where they'd met some goals or we were running into some limitations with insurance, or, there's also the pressures of an outpatient practice of the wait list and people getting in. So all the factors, I felt like I was just often getting people started. And that's sort of when physical therapy ended. So there were a lot of reasons kind of why I transitioned into more of the class model. But Rogue PT and Wellness is majority focused on exercise classes. So we have different types of exercise classes at different levels of athletic ability. So our goal is really to fill the gaps between individual physical therapy and kind of group community classes, like at a senior center where people maybe don't know a lot about Parkinson's and they don't have some of the same specialized equipment and aren't maybe able to offer all the different types of classes at different levels. So we're trying to be kind of right in the middle of that and offer ongoing access to people so they can keep exercising. So one, I think, is when you're teaching classes, it's so different than one-on-one. You're coming in and saying, okay, I mean, this class and like in a circuit class, these aren't necessarily exactly the right thing for every individual who's in the class, but in general, it's what we need to work on. And then within that class, we can tweak things a little bit up and down for each person. So I feel like it is, I mean, it's not that it's totally different than one-on-one therapy, but it's kind of like coming from like two different perspectives in some ways. And in terms of dosing and the intensity, I mean, I'd say one of the main things we are looking at is aerobic intensity, because that is, an overwhelming amount of the research is showing that, aerobic intensity is one of the key features. So most of our classes are sort of set up and geared around being able to improve and increase people's heart rates while they're exercising. And so we are using heart rate monitors in our classes. We have group monitoring up on our TV, so we're actually tracking it. So that is one way that we're monitoring intensity. And then I would say kind of the next step is more of just the motor complexity. Once we have people who are able to get their heart rates up, then we're starting to just do more dynamic, kind of real life functional mobility type things. And then kind of lastly, adding some of those cognitive pieces in. And I think it basically has just evolved from when I first started working with people, especially in classes. And it wasn't actually officially Rogue at the time. I started my own business in 2015, so 7 years ago, and it was just under my name. I started classes and working with people separate from the hospital. And like, we just have evolved together. So, I mean, if we looked at stuff from back then, it was much more simple. It was much less intense. And that's like the cool thing to see is I have clients now that I've been working with for 10 years, and they are doing better now and able to do more in terms of exercise now than they were able to do 10 years ago.
Awesome.
So like, we have evolved together and continue to just try new things and get more cool equipment and add it in. But I really feel like my practice and their ability levels have grown together. And now, I mean, when we have new people joining in, sometimes they're like, I can't believe what's happening in here. And they're like, does everybody in here have Parkinson's? We're like, yeah, but I'm like, I mean, nobody started here. I didn't start here. They didn't start here. Like, you're just joining us like part way on this trajectory. And so things are way more complex than they used to be. But we really, our different classes are at different levels in multiple different ways. And then when we meet a new person and to try to figure out which class is the right place for them to start, I mean, it's pretty complex. It's very different than like working with people one-on-one, where you're like, well, we'll start with what you can handle and we'll ramp up from there. We're, there's like a lot of layers that we're thinking about to get people in the right class and make sure it's safe and effective and they enjoy it. There's a lot of pieces, but I do think, not everybody necessarily is going to teach group classes, but that's one thing I highly recommend for anyone who has the opportunity. I think as a physical therapist working with people one-on-one, when you teach classes, like you get to sort of be a little bit more creative. You don't have to think like, what is the exact right thing for this one person who's in front of me? So you can be creative, and then managing a group is so different. And you have to learn, like, how can I help this person be more independent safely while challenging themselves, instead of maybe having a gait belt on and holding, hovering around them all the time. So I feel like there's so many skills that can get developed in a group class setting. And then you can kind of go back and forth. You can take that into your individual work, and then you can really challenge people at even higher level individually, and then take that back to a class setting. So I feel like there's so much back and forth, and I just really enjoy the class setting. I think the energy is great, and I love the creativity, and then kind of how we ramp things up and down, and start to incorporate more cognitive challenges.
Yeah, and there's so many layers of benefit, I think, to the group model. Like you mentioned, like the energy, the relationships, the connection, the camaraderie, the built-in accountability of those relationships that really influence people coming consistently over a long period of time. That's just absolutely amazing. But I definitely feel your pain on not pain, but just the challenge of getting the right person in the right group, because that can be very, very difficult if you're trying to create this product that's going to be beneficial for kind of a wide variety of functional abilities, maybe cognitive abilities. That you do need to have some type of filter to make sure that the right person's getting in the right class, which if anyone's ever done a group class, you've felt that pain before. So you mentioned your practice has grown, your physical space has grown, your equipment list has grown. And I think the equipment side of things is where I've learned a ton from you and saw things that I've never even seen before. If you were to only be able to pick 3 to 5, I'll give you 5 max, 5 pieces of equipment to run your class, what would you pick and why?
Okay, I would pick Blaze Pods.
All right,
Blaze
what are
Pods,
those for those that aren't familiar?
So Blaze Pods are basically these little pods that light up. So they come in like a pack of 6 traditionally. I got them like when they first came out. There's more options now, I think, for how many you get and everything. But we got 6, and then you use an app like on any tablet or your phone. You use an app and you can control them in many, many different ways. And so basically they can either like they turn on and off, and either it's that you hit them to turn them off, or you can actually have them like flash on and off on a certain time interval. So there's lots of different ways that you can use them. You can program them to work on kind of simple, like they're just lighting up blue and people are stepping and hitting them. So you can start really simple. But it's, and there's lots of ways that you can do this low tech. I've used colored dots and Velcro on the wall and, numbers and letters and stuff for many, many years, still use all those low tech options. But Blaze Pods just allow you to put in settings. You can track things like reaction time in there, which we don't do a ton of tracking, but people can feel like, okay, how quickly can I move? And so we have like Velcro on the walls, and we have them up on the walls for standing activities. We put them on the floor for prone and supine and crawling and, scooting around. So they're great to like get people moving. And because they're, lighting up and then you hit them, it just kind of gives a sense of urgency and really challenges people. And it kind of is gamifying things, basically.
Yeah.
So there's just endless ways that they can be set up, and we've used them outside, inside. I just think they're super versatile, and they do cost, hundreds of dollars, but I 100% think they're worth the investment for all the different things that we can do with them.
Yeah. And the price has gone
really
down.
Mm-hmm.
Probably when you purchased it was probably $500-600 maybe, and they're I think a set of 6, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can get some for like around three-ish. So
yeah. And they do sales, like usually around holidays, they often will do like 20% off sales. So yeah, I think of the both times I've bought mine, I've got them on sale. I tend to like wait for things.
Oh yeah. All right. So we got Blaze Pods. Those are solid.
Blaze Pods. Yeah. And then, so the next one would be Tidal Tank. So this is basically like, there's a couple different sizes of tanks, but the one that I like is a big one, and you fill it with water to whatever amount you want. So it goes up to, I think the biggest one goes up to 45 pounds if you fill it all the way with water, but you can start with 5 pounds or 10, any amount up until that 35. And so it's weighted. It has handles in a couple different places. So I like it because, strengthening, which I definitely feel like, MMOA has influenced my practice, even though I haven't even taken the course yet. But we incorporate a lot more strengthening into our classes and programs than we used to. And I love the Title Tank because of that adjustability. We also have an online membership. So for our online membership, that is a piece, we don't tell people they have to get all sorts of different equipment for home, but the Title Tank is something for our strengthening classes. You can start with 5 pounds, then 10, 15, 20, and you can increase over time without having to own, 10 different weights or kettlebells or something. So I really like how adjustable the weight is. And then the water moves. So it adds this balance and stability challenge that is very unique. And I would say different than almost anything else. And it's this, it's made out of plastic. And so it's essentially collapsible. Like you can pour the water out, you could collapse it and travel with it. And then it doesn't really take up that much space anyways. So the Title Tank is super cool. And again,
you posted a video today on that, right? I think I saw that.
Yeah. So we were
Super
just like
cool.
holding it at our chest, doing side stepping. So it's adding, that only has about 10 pounds of weight, but that water is sloshing. And so it's both like strengthening and a stability exercise. And there's just, again, like endless ways that it can be used. It's super portable. So for, people working with people in their homes, again, you don't have to maybe have like a whole bunch of different, granted, putting water in and out of it is not like something that you want to be doing multiple times in the day.
Yeah.
So that, like, if you really needed adjustable weights, it's probably good to have a couple weights. But if you were saying, okay, for this week, like I'm going to work with people with 10 pounds and do that set of exercises. Next week, we're going to fill it up to 15. It's really very flexible and great for people to have at home. So yeah, that would be number 2. Let's see. Number 3, I would say, is heart rate monitoring. So that is something that I really feel like both working with people one-on-one and in group classes, so much research says high intensity is important. And I just feel like everybody's out there doing it and not necessarily measuring it. It's really important to know where are people at. And so we didn't have, like, for the first probably 3.5 years that I was doing classes, we were renting space in an Anytime Fitness gym. And we were not monitoring heart rate at that time. If somebody had their own Fitbit, Apple Watch, they were monitoring, we would talk about it. We tell people what their goals were, but we were not monitoring it as a class. And when we started monitoring it, when we moved into our space and we got as a gift a set of heart rate monitors, when we started having it up on the board, and the app we use, On Beat, shows, like, it has people's first name and what their heart rate is, and then the percentage, and then it's in color. So if they are at 60% or below their heart rate max, you enter, their weight, their age, their resting heart rate. So it's calculating. So if they're at 60% or below, it's in gray. Once they're 61 to 70, it's in blue. 71 to 80 is green. 81 to 90 is orange. And then 91 or above is red. So seeing like names up in color is so motivating. And across the board, our members were like, seeing that motivates me to work a little bit harder. So, we didn't have to say or do anything. They saw it. They saw how everyone's doing. People are asking questions now, what does that mean? And, I think a lot of people were in that gray zone, just below 60%. And the majority of research for people with Parkinson's is kind of between 60 and 80% heart rate max. There's some specifics, like a treadmill study by Shankman et al. That compared 80 to 85 compared to 60 to 65, and 80 to 85 was better. But, I think our biggest goal first is to get to 60 to 80% heart rate max. And then we might start looking at other details. But a lot of people were kind of in that like mid to high 50s. And so we realized, okay, if we put your incline up a little bit on the treadmill, if we had a little more resistance, if we focus on that speed just a little bit, we now get you over that threshold. And what if, all the people are like, I'm exercising and it's not really working? What if there are all these people at like 56% heart rate max and just getting them like 5% higher, and then they can truly start to gain those benefits? There was this really great study, and I think it's the Italian group, like Frazida, and forget the other gentleman's name, but they said, like, in people with Parkinson's, therapy historically has not, induced the amount of carryover and gains that we want to see. Like, people with Parkinson's, they are doing better, walking better when they're with us, they leave and they go right back to where they were before. And they said, like, the missing component is aerobic exercise. Aerobic exercise is what allows those neuroplastic changes to occur and allows people to really experience that carryover. And, so I'm like, I just feel like there's all these people out there exercising just slightly below the intensity that they need. And so, it's really motivating to see people get emailed reports. They like print it out and bring it in. And they're like, what does this mean? And they're like, this week I wasn't working as hard as last week. And I was like, well, this week our theme is flexibility. So that makes sense. Like last week was strength. It's going to be a little different depending on the theme of the week and what class you're in. But I mean, people are just so like, they're paying attention, they're asking questions, and that's, you know, kind of taking on that responsibility for their health. And I just think that spreads out to so many other areas of their life when they, you know, feel like they have some control over things and they know what they're doing and why. So yeah, I love having it. And also, I mean, we have adjusted kind of the format of some of our classes based on having that information from the heart rate monitors. Our circuit class previously was sort of random. Like we were working on all these different skills, but we like sometimes it would be high intensity, sometimes not. Some rotations were, some weren't. And so we actually adjusted our format. So now out of 10 rotations, 5 are high intensity with the purpose of getting the heart rate up. We keep them more simple. They're not dual tasking. And then the other side is more of our skilled. And so we zigzag back and forth between high intensity, get your heart rate up, over to skilled, work on your balance, posture, flexibility, strength, back over to high intensity, back and forth. And so we can now see we can get people's heart rates up and keep them up more consistently throughout a class. So it has allowed us to kind of tweak our classes and make them better because of having that information. And then the last thing, not to say too many things about heart rate monitoring.
And for everyone listening, I'm posting these links in the MMA community Facebook group, so you can check them out afterwards. All right, next thing.
The heart rate monitors that we use are Scosh. And I chose those because you can use them with all different apps as opposed to like Polar and certain brands out there. You buy the heart rate monitors, you use it with their program. And I liked kind of the flexibility to figure out what apps we wanted to use. And some of our members get their own at home and then they can use their own app at home. So
where do they wear it?
They are armbands. So that also helps too.
Yeah.
And Scosh has quite a bit of research. They both have they have different colored lasers so that they are more appropriate for different skin tones, which is something I didn't even really think about until reading, kind of trying to understand. So they have different colored lasers. And then their armband, which in a class setting, it's, you know, chest monitoring is great, but, you know, getting it on and off and switching that out in class is a little more work. So these are armband ones. You can wear them on the forearm or on the upper arm. They tend to be accurate for the most part. I mean, we have some people who like really can't get their heart rate up and have a blunted heart rate response. And we had one gentleman where because of what we were seeing in class, you know, we let his cardiologist know, and they are considering a pacemaker now because he's like, his heart rate is so low, it's potentially dangerous. So, I mean, people with Parkinson's have a lot of autonomic symptoms as well. So we're catching, you know, sometimes we're like, okay, your heart rate's really low. Is that our heart rate monitor is not accurate? We'll check it with, you know, pulse ox. Or is it that we're actually capturing things that aren't known? Like maybe that's why you're so tired. Maybe that's why, you know, you're not feeling well, is not just Parkinson's, but other things going on with your system. Yeah. So we're able to capture that. And then also we had some people who were coming in and exercising and they were like, I feel terrible after exercise. I'm so tired. I can't do anything the rest of the day. It takes me a couple of days to recover. And it's like that, you know, yes, we're going for high intensity, but that is not the goal. The goal is not for you to feel bad or not be able to function after class. So those specific people, when monitoring, we started to see those are some people who have this really elevated heart rate response with exercise. They are in the red zone. And so it has actually allowed us, like when we talk to them, they're like, I feel okay. But, you know, their ability to kind of assess what is going on with their system is not totally accurate. And so when people are in the red zone, we check in with how they feel. And we're maybe saying, let's take a break, let's back off in intensity. And sure enough, like, you know, after implementing that, people are like, okay, I feel much better after exercise class. And we're like, you know, there is such a thing as working too hard. Not very many of us are doing it, but some people are. And that is helpful too, because I think that happens a lot with exercise classes or even PT. People come in, they work a little too hard, they're sore, they don't feel well afterwards. And they're like, oh, this isn't for me. Like I can't exercise. And us being able to really adjust the dose and explain to them what we're looking at, I think can really help with exercise adherence too, so that people aren't doing too much where it's really not beneficial for them. Okay, so that's 3.
We can do 4. You can just, if you had to pick 4.
I mean, the next one is the chair, I guess. I'll just go low
tech. All right. Low tech. I like it.
Yeah. So, I mean, we don't do a lot. We don't do any classes that are seated only, but we certainly do, you know, sitting exercise. We also use chairs a lot for getting down on the ground and back up for people who say like, I can't get down on the ground. We're like, guess what? Look, just use a little bit of support. And so many people don't even need any physical assistance from us when they realize, oh, I can just use a little bit of support to get down and back up. And then chairs, I mean, we step up on them, we step around them. We do so many things with chairs. And it's funny because, yeah, we have like a room full of stuff. And sometimes I set up a circuit class and I'm like, we're using mostly chairs for this class today. Like, it's not even anything special, but there's just so much we can do with them. We're doing, elevated burpees and planks and things like that. And again, just really scaling that exercise. Our members, we have members as young as in their 40s with Parkinson's up until like late 80s. So, we have a huge range of age that comes into our classes, ability levels, years that people have had Parkinson's. And so, yeah, we are scaling exercises like way up and down all day, every day.
That's beautiful. I love it. All right. So Claire's top 4. I'm going to repeat it for those just joining. Blaze pods coming in at number 1. The tidal tank, correct? Number 2. Number 3, we had On Beat, which is a heart rate monitoring system. And then number 4, old trusty, the chair.
You're without arms too.
Without arms and no wheels, y'all. No wheels.
Yeah.
And a strong supportive back if you need it. Awesome. That's super cool to hear. And for those that don't follow Claire, you're going to see all kinds of videos of her using these implements along with all kinds of other things with all kinds of different types of folks, different functional abilities. And you will get tons and tons and tons of ideas, which makes me super excited to come out in May for MMOA Live. May 14th and 15th, because I'm going to get to play with all these toys. I've got a few things I want to play around with, the simulated fall, the tripper, whatever it's called. Super pumped about that. Get my hands on this tidal tank, play around with some blaze pods. It's going to be super fun. I'm probably going to make a fool of myself, which that's the goal. That's the goal there. Awesome.
Yeah. We basically call it like an adult playground here. That's like when members come in. Yeah, we got things hanging from the ceiling. We're like flying around. We got harnesses.
Oh yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
I love it. All right, Claire. Well, I don't want to take any more of your time. She's got a consult here in about 20 minutes. If people do have any questions about your practice, ideas, whatever, where would you like them to go to find more of your stuff, and then plug NeuroCollaborative too, if you don't mind?
Yeah, definitely. So our website is roguept.com for kind of our in-person, then we have kind of links to our online membership as well. So that is a great place just to kind of look through and see classes and ideas. We have a lot of resources on our website. We have an online membership called Rogue in Motion that if anybody out there is seeing people with Parkinson's and wants to help people transition to a home exercise program that they could do with therapists and have some of that, social piece at home. That's been really fun to do over the past 2 years. And then the best way to get in touch with me directly is email. So Claire, Claire, all the vowels in Claire, at roguept.com. I am on Instagram a lot, but I feel like I don't always see, like, especially message requests that come in. I'm kind of bad about like checking messages. So that is not the best way, but email, I'm on every day, multiple times a day. So email, and then following us though on social media just to get a lot of ideas. Instagram is where I post the most now. There's lots on Facebook, but more currently I'm kind of posting on Instagram consistently videos of our classes and the work that we're doing with people. And then NeuroCollaborative is a program that my friend Aaron Gallardo and I started because, we did both kind of clinically wanting to be really creative and innovative. And then also both of us kind of have a passion for different business models. And we see such a need out there in physical therapy, both for physical therapists to get to do what they really want to do and what benefits their clients and patients and members, to maybe avoid burnout or be able to implement the research. I mean, so many people I know who work in hospitals are like, I want to implement this. And the answer is no. I don't get to do classes. I don't get to see people with enough frequency. So we just see there's such a need for kind of starting these new business models, whether people, are mobile and work on their own or start programs like this and classes. So both of us are really passionate about kind of these alternative business models. And so we started a program called NeuroSpark. That's an online membership that is clinical education. So it is actual CEUs. We have like 2 webinars a month. It's all neuro content. So it is all neuro, like across the board, different diagnoses, lots of content that is appropriate for different diagnoses. And we also have like a neuro biz section of that where we talk about business, getting started, how to grow, how you want to look at things. So lots of things incorporated into that membership. So anybody who's interested can follow us on social media at NeuroCollaborative. And if you're interested in that membership, we open that 3 times a year. And then we kind of have like 4 months of content kind of blocked out each time.
Okay, sweet. All right. So all those links, folks, I'm going to put that in the podcast show notes. And then I'm going to drop them in the Facebook video as well. So if you're watching this on Instagram, head over to the MOA Community Facebook group or check out the MOA podcast when we publish this, and the links will be in there. Awesome. All right, Claire, you're amazing. Thank you for your time. Excited to meet you in person in Orange County. If anyone is watching and curious about that, join us. It's going to be a hell of a time. Claire is going to purposefully make me fall, trip me on that apparatus. It's going to be rather entertaining, I'm sure. Hopefully we won't have any injuries, but it's going to be a good old time. So
yeah, that's Claire, what the harness is for.
I don't want the harness.
I don't want the harness to get on it without the harness. Only with the harness.
I'll sign the waiver. All right. Thanks, Claire.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome.